What would you do if the people surrounding you thought humiliation was entertainment, but they had no idea someone far more dangerous was already watching every move they made? Imagine walking back to your dorm after a long, exhausting night, only to realize that a group of powerful frat guys had decided you were their next target, not because you did anything wrong, but simply because they thought nobody would defend you. Now imagine those same people laughing, recording videos, blocking your path, completely unaware that a Navy SEAL sitting quietly in the shadows had already noticed everything. And trust me, by the end of this story, the people who started this night feeling untouchable are going to wish they had walked away the moment they had the chance. Stay until the end because the final confrontation completely changes the balance of power in a way nobody saw coming. The campus of Westbridge University looked peaceful from a distance. Tall brick buildings, glowing dorm windows, students crossing the sidewalks with backpacks and headphones, the kind of place parents proudly took photos of during freshman orientation. But underneath that polished image was another reality students rarely spoke about openly. Certain fraternities controlled social life on campus like private kingdoms. Their money, connections, and influence stretched into everything: parties, athletics, student leadership, even campus security relationships. People learned very quickly which names carried power and which students were expected to stay quiet when those names were involved. Nia Brooks learned that lesson during her second semester. Nia wasn't loud. She wasn't someone chasing popularity or campus attention. At 20 years old, she carried herself with a calm kind of discipline that came from growing up fast. While most students spent weekends partying or trying to impress people online, Nia spent her nights balancing 2 jobs and keeping her scholarship intact. Every decision mattered to her because failure wasn't an inconvenience, it was something her family couldn't afford. She had earned her place at Westbridge through relentless effort, but some students looked at her like she didn't belong there at all. Especially the guys from the Alpha Rho fraternity. At first, it started with comments disguised as jokes. Little remarks when she walked past their house. Questions about whether she was, really, on scholarship. Smirks when she ignored them instead of reacting. The kind of behavior designed to test boundaries slowly, carefully, until they discovered what they could get away with. And the more Nia refused to respond emotionally, the more obsessed certain people became with provoking her. The worst among them was Tyler Mercer. Tyler had the kind of confidence that only comes from never facing real consequences. His father was a wealthy donor connected to university leadership, and everyone on campus knew it. Professors treated him carefully. Administrators avoided conflict with him. Even campus police seemed to hesitate around him. Tyler carried himself like the university belonged to him personally, and the people around him acted like challenging him simply wasn't worth the trouble. And for a long time, nobody did. But Tyler's interest in Nia wasn't random. People like him hated being ignored. The fact that Nia never flirted with him, never laughed at his comments, never acted impressed by his money or status slowly became personal to him. What started as casual harassment evolved into targeted humiliation. Anonymous rumors online, drinks, accidentally, spilled near her in public. Fake stories spread around campus. And every time Nia chose silence instead of retaliation, Tyler interpreted it as weakness. What he didn't understand was that silence and weakness are not the same thing, especially when someone is watching. 3 days before everything exploded, Nia received a text message she hadn't expected. "How's campus treating you?" The message came from her older brother, Marcus Brooks. Nia stared at the screen longer than she expected because Marcus rarely checked in casually. Not because he didn't care, but because his life operated in long periods of absence and secrecy. Marcus had spent years in military special operations, and even now, most of what he did remained vague and heavily classified. Family gatherings happened without warning. Phone calls disappeared for months. Conversations were short, careful, controlled. But despite the distance, Marcus had always been fiercely protective of his younger sister. Nia smiled faintly before typing back. Still surviving. 3 dots appeared instantly. You sure? That question hit differently. Not because of the words themselves, but because Marcus had always possessed an unsettling ability to notice things other people missed. Even growing up, he could detect fear or tension in her voice before anyone else recognized it. And Nia knew better than to lie to him directly. Still, she tried. Campus drama. Nothing serious. Several seconds passed. Then Marcus responded. People bothering you. Nia hesitated. She could have told him everything. About Tyler. About the harassment. About how exhausting it had become pretending not to care every single day. But Marcus wasn't someone who processed threats emotionally. He processed them strategically. And something deep inside her knew that once he decided somebody was dangerous, he would never look at them casually again. So she answered carefully. I can handle it. No response came after that. And somehow, that silence bothered her more than if he had argued. Because Marcus only went quiet when he was thinking. 2 nights later, the campus held one of its biggest fraternity events of the semester. Music echoed across the university grounds. Crowds moved between houses. Drunk students filled sidewalks and parking lots while security tried unsuccessfully to control the chaos. Nia had avoided the parties completely, staying late at the library to finish work before finally walking back toward her dorm close to midnight. That was when she noticed the voices behind her. At first, she ignored them. Then she heard Tyler laughing. And suddenly, her stomach tightened. Because there's a specific kind of fear that comes when you realize certain people have been waiting for the right moment to corner you. Nia kept walking without turning around, gripping the strap of her backpack tighter as footsteps grew closer behind her. The path toward her dorm suddenly felt too long, too exposed, too empty despite the noise elsewhere on campus. She could hear multiple voices now. Male, loud, drunk enough to be reckless. Tyler called her name casually like they were friends. Nia didn't respond. That only made them laugh harder. And somewhere beyond the glow of the dorm lights, hidden where nobody thought to look, someone else had already started watching the situation unfold with absolute attention to detail. Someone who noticed the positioning, the body language, the growing aggression. Someone trained for years to recognize danger before violence actually began. But the frat boys didn't notice him. Not yet. And that was their first mistake. With that said, thanks for watching and until next time. Have you ever felt that moment when your instincts tell you something is about to go wrong, but by the time you realize how serious it is, it's already too late to walk away? Nia felt that exact sensation as the footsteps behind her grew faster. The laughter wasn't casual anymore. It carried that sharp, reckless edge that came when people believed there would be no consequences for whatever happened next. Tyler Mercer wasn't simply following her to tease her. There was purpose in the way his voice kept getting closer, in the confidence of the other boys surrounding him, in the way they spread out just enough to close the distance without making it obvious to anyone watching from far away. Nia kept moving toward her dorm, every nerve in her body tightening with each step. She had spent months learning how to survive people like Tyler. The key was never giving them what they wanted. No reaction, no visible fear, no anger they could laugh at later. She had trained herself to keep her face neutral no matter what they said. But tonight felt different. Tonight there was something heavier underneath Tyler's laughter. Something deliberate. Come on, Nia, Tyler called, his voice loud enough to carry across the empty path. Why are you acting scared? We're just trying to talk. His friends laughed on cue. Nia said nothing. Her dorm entrance was less than 100 yards away now, glowing under yellow campus lights like some distant promise of safety. Students moved in and out through the main doors, too far to notice anything unusual. If she could reach them, this would end. But Tyler knew that too. And he moved faster. Within seconds, he stepped directly in front of her, forcing her to stop. The others spread out behind him, blocking the path back. Tyler smiled down at her with the kind of confidence only rich boys ever seemed to master, the kind that came from years of being protected by money, status, and systems built to forgive them before they even made mistakes. "What's the rush?" he asked. Nia's pulse hammered against her ribs, but her expression stayed flat. "Move." That single word made Tyler grin wider. There it was. A reaction. Small, but enough to satisfy whatever twisted game had brought him here tonight. "See," he said, glancing back at his friends. "She can talk." More laughter. One of the boys pulled out his phone, casually angling it upward. Recording. The sight made Nia's stomach drop. This wasn't spontaneous. They had planned this. Tyler took one step closer. "You've been acting real stuck up all semester," he said, lowering his voice. "You think you're too good to even acknowledge people." Nia held his stare. "No," she said evenly. "I just know exactly what kind of person you are." For a split second, Tyler's smile disappeared. Not because her words hurt him. Because she had challenged him in front of his audience. And boys like Tyler never tolerated embarrassment. The air changed instantly. His expression hardened, just enough for Nia to notice. "You should be careful how you talk to people," he said quietly. Behind him, his friends stopped laughing. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. This had crossed from harassment into something else. And somewhere beyond the shadows lining the walkway, Marcus Brooks noticed it too. He had arrived on campus less than 30 minutes earlier. No warning, no announcement. The moment Nia stopped responding to his messages 2 days ago, instinct had started bothering him in ways he had learned never to ignore. Officially, he was stateside for a short military debrief. Unofficially, he had decided to make an unexpected visit to his sister's campus before returning to base. He had planned to surprise her tomorrow. Instead, he found himself standing in darkness 50 yards away, every ounce of his training instantly locking onto the threat in front of him. Marcus didn't react emotionally. That was one of the first things special operations training stripped away. Emotion clouds. Assessment. Assessment keeps people alive, and his assessment was immediate. 5 males. Alcohol impaired. Escalating confidence. One primary aggressor. Target isolated. Recording device visible. No immediate weapons observed. Potential for physical escalation increasing rapidly. Marcus remained perfectly still, watching, waiting, because intervening too early often caused escalation. But waiting too long could be catastrophic. And Marcus had spent years learning exactly where that line existed. Back on the walkway, Tyler leaned closer. "You know what your problem is," he said softly. Nia didn't answer. "You act like people should respect you automatically." His breath smelled like expensive whiskey. "You haven't earned that here." Nia's fingers tightened around her backpack strap. Every part of her wanted to shove past him and run for the dorm doors. But she knew how these situations worked. Sudden movement could trigger pursuit. Panic would entertain them. Fear would energize them. So she stood her ground. And said nothing. Tyler smiled again, but there was something uglier in it now. Then, very slowly, he reached toward her shoulder. That was the moment Marcus moved. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just decisively. 1 second he was hidden in darkness. The next, he was crossing open ground with calm, terrifying purpose. Tyler's fingers were inches from touching Nia when a voice cut cleanly through the night. "Take your hand off my sister." The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Something about the tone froze every person there instantly. Tyler turned first, annoyance already forming on his face. Then he saw Marcus. And whatever he expected to see, it wasn't this. Marcus Brooks didn't look angry. That would have been easier to process. He looked controlled, cold, focused in a way Tyler had probably never encountered in his entire privileged life. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed plainly enough to avoid attention, Marcus carried himself with that unmistakable stillness of someone trained to become dangerous only when absolutely necessary. And somehow, That stillness felt far more threatening than yelling ever could. Tyler forced a laugh. "Who the hell are you?" Marcus stopped 10 feet away. His eyes never left Tyler's face. "I'm the person giving you one chance to walk away." The words landed like steel. And for the first time that night, Tyler Mercer's confidence cracked just slightly. Because deep down, some primitive part of him had already recognized the truth. This wasn't another student. This wasn't someone who could be intimidated. And whatever happened next, the rules Tyler had always relied on no longer applied. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The music from distant fraternity houses still echoed faintly across campus, students still laughed somewhere far away, and dorm windows still glowed against the night sky. But on that narrow stretch of sidewalk outside the dorms, the atmosphere had completely changed. Tyler Mercer felt it first. That shift. The invisible transfer of control. Just moments earlier, he had been the one dictating the situation. His friends were laughing, recording, surrounding Nia like a trapped target in some twisted game designed purely for entertainment. But now every instinct in his body was warning him that the man standing in front of them operated by a completely different set of rules. Marcus Brooks stood motionless, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes locked directly onto Tyler without the slightest trace of nervousness. And somehow, that calmness felt more dangerous than aggression ever could. One of Tyler's friends tried forcing another laugh. "Bro, relax," he muttered. "Nobody's doing anything." Marcus didn't even glance at him. His focus stayed entirely on Tyler. Because Marcus already knew who the leader was. People always revealed it through body language. Tyler straightened slightly, trying to recover control of the moment. "You don't get to threaten people on this campus," he said, though his voice lacked the confidence it carried earlier. Marcus answered immediately. "And you don't get to corner women outside their dorm at midnight." Silence. One of the boys slowly lowered his phone. Not because anyone told him to. Because suddenly recording this didn't feel funny anymore. Nia stood frozen between relief and fear, her pulse still racing hard enough to make her chest ache. She hadn't even realized Marcus was on campus. The sight of him standing there felt almost unreal, like her mind had invented protection at the exact moment she needed it most. But Marcus wasn't looking at her yet. That alone scared her. Because growing up, she had learned something about her brother very early. When Marcus became this calm, somebody had already crossed a serious line. Tyler tried smiling again, but it looked strained now. "You're making this bigger than it is," he said. "We were joking around." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "No," he said quietly. "You were testing how far you could go." That sentence hit harder than Tyler expected. Because it was true. And people like Tyler hated being understood too clearly. The air grew heavier. One of the frat boys stepped forward slightly, trying to reclaim momentum. "You know who Tyler's family is?" he asked. Marcus finally looked at him. And the boy immediately regretted speaking. Not because Marcus moved. Because he didn't. There was something deeply unsettling about the absolute stillness in his expression. No intimidation tactics. No emotional reaction. Just direct assessment, like he was mentally categorizing every person standing there and deciding exactly how dangerous they were. Then Marcus spoke. "Do you know how little that matters to me?" The boy went silent. Tyler's jaw tightened. Normally, mentioning his family shifted situations instantly. People became cautious, nervous, apologetic. But Marcus didn't react like someone impressed by influence or money. If anything, he looked increasingly irritated by it. And Tyler wasn't used to that feeling. Not being feared. Marcus finally turned slightly toward Nia. "You okay?" The question sounded calm, but beneath it was something sharper. Protective instinct held under tight control. Nia nodded once. "I'm fine." Marcus studied her face for half a second longer than necessary. He noticed the tension in her shoulders. The tight grip on her backpack. The way she positioned herself automatically away from Tyler and his friends. Fine wasn't the word he would have used. But he didn't push her. Not yet. Tyler shoved his hands into his pockets, trying desperately to recover authority in front of his friends. "You're acting like we attacked her," he scoffed. Marcus looked back at him slowly. "You surrounded her." No response. "You blocked her path." Silence. "You followed her across campus after midnight." The words came one at a time. Precise. Measured. Impossible to argue against. Tyler's face reddened slightly. "We didn't touch her." Marcus took one step forward. The movement was small, but every single frat boy instinctively stiffened. "You were about to." The certainty in Marcus's voice made Tyler hesitate for the first time all night. Because deep down, he knew Marcus was right. Another silence settled over the group. Longer this time, more dangerous. And suddenly Tyler realized something uncomfortable. Nobody was laughing anymore. His friends kept glancing at Marcus carefully. Uncertainty replacing drunken confidence with each passing second. The dynamic had shifted too fast for them to understand completely, but instinctively they recognized a truth their egos hadn't prepared them for. This man was not bluffing. Tyler forced another scoff. "What are you supposed to be? Military or something?" That was the first real mistake he made after Marcus arrived. Because Nia saw the tiny change in her brother's eyes immediately. Not anger. Recognition. Marcus answered calmly. "Something like that." Tyler laughed nervously, trying to regain control again. "Well, this isn't your base. You don't get to come here acting tough." Marcus stepped closer. Now only a few feet separated them. And suddenly Tyler realized how physically overwhelming Marcus actually was up close. Not bodybuilder big. Worse. Controlled strength. The kind that looked efficient instead of performative. Marcus lowered his voice. "I'm going to explain something once." Every frat boy went completely silent. "You and your friends are going to walk away from my sister tonight." A pause. "You are never going to follow her again." Another pause. "You are never going to corner her again." Tyler swallowed hard. "And if I ever hear your name connected to her again." Marcus leaned slightly closer. "You will learn very quickly why people like me don't need to raise our voices." The threat wasn't dramatic. That made it infinitely worse. Because Marcus sounded like someone describing future reality, not making emotional promises. Tyler's confidence finally cracked completely. For the first time in years, he found himself staring at someone he couldn't intimidate, manipulate, or socially overpower. And somewhere deep inside him, panic started replacing ego. Because he was beginning to understand something terrifying. The wrong person had witnessed the wrong moment tonight. Nobody spoke after Marcus finished. The silence pressing down on the group felt heavier than shouting ever could. Tyler Mercer stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just happened to him psychologically. His entire life had been built around one simple truth: people back down eventually. Money, status, connections, popularity, one of those things always worked. Someone always got nervous first. Someone always became more afraid of consequences than he was. But Marcus Brooks wasn't reacting like any person Tyler had dealt with before. There was no hesitation in him. No performance. No need to prove dominance. And somehow, that made him terrifying. Tyler glanced briefly at his friends, silently searching for support, but their expressions had changed too. The alcohol confidence was fading rapidly now that they realized this situation was no longer harmless fun. One by one, they started avoiding direct eye contact with Marcus. Instinct. Even if they didn't fully understand why. Marcus remained completely still, watching, waiting, the same way predators observe movement before deciding whether danger is escalating or retreating. Nia finally spoke softly. "Marcus." Her voice carried a warning only he would recognize. She knew her brother well enough to understand something dangerous was happening beneath his calm exterior. Marcus wasn't emotional when he got angry. He became quieter, more focused, more controlled. That was when people got hurt. Marcus looked at her briefly. And immediately, his expression softened just enough for her to notice. It lasted less than a second. Then his attention shifted back to Tyler. "You should leave," Marcus said calmly. Tyler's pride fought desperately against reality. Every instinct told him to say something disrespectful, to reassert control, to remind everyone who he was on this campus. His ego couldn't survive walking away silently in front of his own friends. So he smirked again, though weaker this time. "You think you scare me?" Marcus answered instantly. "No." That response caught Tyler off guard. Marcus stepped slightly closer. "I think you've spent your whole life protected from consequences." The words landed harder than Tyler expected, because something about the way Marcus said them made them feel less like an insult and more like a diagnosis. Tyler's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about me." Marcus stared at him for a long moment, then quietly said, "I know exactly what you are." That sentence changed everything. The frat boys shifted uncomfortably behind Tyler now, the atmosphere growing more tense by the second. They had expected yelling, maybe a fight, something loud and chaotic they could process. But this calm psychological dismantling felt different. Marcus wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was dismantling Tyler's confidence piece by piece without raising his voice once. And Tyler could feel it happening. That terrified him most. One of the boys finally muttered nervously, "Come on, man, let's just go." Tyler immediately snapped back, "Shut up." But the command lacked authority now, because the group had already begun emotionally retreating. Marcus noticed it too. The dynamic was collapsing, fast. Nia watched her brother carefully, trying to read what he was thinking. She hadn't seen him in months, but this version of Marcus felt familiar in a way that brought back old childhood memories. When they were younger, Marcus had always been the quiet protector. The one who noticed threats before anyone else did. The one who stepped between danger and family without hesitation. But after the military, something about him changed. Not colder, sharper. Like years of experience had taught him exactly how dangerous people could become when nobody stopped them early enough. Tyler tried one final attempt at saving face. "You don't belong here," he muttered. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Neither do predators." That word hit the group like ice water. Predators. Suddenly the situation didn't sound like drunken college behavior anymore. It sounded criminal, intentional, ugly. Tyler's face darkened instantly. "We didn't do anything," Marcus answered without hesitation. "You were preparing to." Tyler opened his mouth again, but no words came out this time. Because deep down, he knew Marcus had seen through the entire situation from the start. The circling, the intimidation, the recording, the blocked path, none of it looked accidental when viewed from outside the frat boy bubble they normally operated inside. And Marcus had viewed all of it with trained eyes. That realization started infecting the others too. For the first time that night, some of them looked genuinely uncomfortable with what they had participated in. Marcus finally turned fully toward Nia. "Go inside," he said quietly. She hesitated. "What about? I'll handle this." Tyler immediately scoffed, trying one last time to reclaim control. "Handle what?" Marcus slowly looked back at him. And suddenly Tyler regretted speaking again. Because there was something deeply unsettling about Marcus's eyes now, not rage, but complete certainty. Marcus spoke carefully. "Whether tonight ends as a warning, a pause, or a lesson," the words landed like concrete. One of the frat boys immediately stepped backward. Then another. Tyler noticed. And panic flashed across his face for the first time. Because group confidence only works while the group remains united. And his was starting to fracture. Nia moved slowly toward the dorm entrance, though every instinct told her not to leave Marcus alone out there. But she also understood something important. Her brother didn't want an audience. He wanted control of the situation. As she reached the edge of the dorm walkway, she looked back one last time. Marcus hadn't moved, neither had Tyler. But the balance of power between them had completely reversed. Earlier that night, Tyler had stood there believing Nia was isolated and vulnerable. Now he was the one realizing how exposed he truly was. And the most terrifying part, Marcus Brooks still hadn't even begun telling him who he really was. Nia stopped near the dorm entrance instead of going inside completely. She knew Marcus had told her to leave, but she also knew her brother well enough to recognize when a situation hadn't truly ended yet. Behind her, students moved through the lobby laughing, distracted by parties, phones, conversations, completely unaware that only a few yards away the atmosphere had turned dangerously serious. Nobody looking through the dorm windows would immediately understand what was happening outside. To them, it probably looked like an argument between students. But Nia understood the truth. Marcus wasn't arguing, he was assessing. And Tyler Mercer was beginning to realize that too. The frat boys had lost all their earlier energy now. Their posture had changed completely. Shoulders tense, eyes shifting nervously. Nobody recording anymore. Nobody laughing. Alcohol confidence disappears quickly when instinct finally catches up to reality. Tyler tried refusing that reality as long as possible. You think because you're older you can come here threatening college students? He snapped. Marcus answered calmly. No. A pause. I think you made a mistake following my sister tonight. Tyler forced another scoff. You keep saying that like something actually happened. Marcus took one slow step forward. Now Tyler had to tilt his head slightly upward just to maintain eye contact. You blocked her path. Silence. You isolated her. Another pause. You surrounded her after midnight while your friends recorded. Marcus's voice never changed. That made every word worse. Because there was no emotion clouding the facts. Only precision. Tyler swallowed hard, though he tried hiding it. Marcus noticed anyway. He noticed everything. Years of military operations had trained him to read tiny physical reactions most people missed entirely. Breathing patterns, eye movement, hand tension, fear responses. Tyler Mercer was trying desperately to project confidence, but his nervous system had already betrayed him. Marcus could see panic building underneath the ego. And that was dangerous, because frightened men often become reckless. One of the frat boys finally spoke carefully. Look, man, we're leaving, okay? Marcus didn't look at him. Good. The boy immediately started backing away. Another followed. Then another. Tyler turned sharply toward them. Seriously. Nobody answered. That silence hit Tyler harder than Marcus's threats. Because for the first time in years, his social protection system was collapsing in real time. The same guys who laughed beside him 20 minutes earlier were suddenly prioritizing their own safety over loyalty. And Tyler wasn't emotionally prepared for abandonment. He pointed angrily at Marcus. You think this is over? Marcus answered instantly. No. The calmness of that response made Tyler's stomach tighten. Marcus stepped closer again, close enough now that Tyler could fully see the details in his face. No intoxication, no adrenaline panic, no uncertainty, just terrifying control. Marcus lowered his voice. You've mistaken tolerance for weakness your entire life. Tyler's jaw flexed. You don't know me. Marcus ignored the interruption. You think power means people being afraid to challenge you. A pause. You think money protects you from consequences. Tyler's face reddened. You don't know anything about my family. Marcus stared at him for several seconds before speaking again. You're right. Another pause. I know something far more important. Tyler forced himself not to look away. Marcus leaned slightly closer. I know exactly how men like you behave when nobody stops you early. The words landed with brutal weight. Because suddenly Tyler realized this man wasn't reacting to one isolated incident tonight. Marcus was reacting to a pattern. And people trained to identify patterns are much harder to manipulate than people reacting emotionally. The remaining frat boys were nearly gone now, slowly distancing themselves without directly running away. Nobody wanted to be associated with this anymore. Tyler noticed that too. And humiliation started mixing with fear. That combination made him desperate. "You're acting crazy over nothing," he muttered. Marcus's expression hardened slightly for the first time. Nothing. That single word carried enough force to make Tyler instinctively step backward. Marcus continued calmly. "My sister changed the route she walks home." Tyler froze. Marcus took another step. "She stopped answering messages normally." Another step. "She started pretending things were fine." Tyler's breathing became visibly tighter now. Marcus's voice remained perfectly steady. "You want to know the problem with people like you?" Silence. "You mistake adaptation for comfort." Those words hit deeper than Tyler understood immediately. But Nia understood. Because Marcus was right, she had adapted, changed routines, avoided certain places, stayed quiet, walked faster at night, pretended not to notice harassment. Not because she wasn't affected. Because survival often looks invisible from the outside. Marcus finally stopped moving. Only inches separated them now. And Tyler could no longer hide the fear in his eyes. Then Marcus said something that changed the atmosphere completely. "I spent 11 years hunting dangerous men." Tyler's face went pale instantly. Not because Marcus raised his voice. Because suddenly every instinct Tyler had been suppressing screamed the same warning at once. This wasn't a bluff. Marcus continued quietly. "I know exactly what escalation looks like." The night air suddenly felt colder. Nia watched Tyler carefully now and realized something almost shocking. For the first time since she had met him, Tyler Mercer looked genuinely afraid. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "And tonight?" A long pause. "You were getting very close." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the distant campus noise seemed quieter somehow. Then Marcus stepped back for the first time all night. The movement surprised Tyler more than aggression would have. Marcus looked toward the dorm entrance briefly, making sure Nia was safe. Then his eyes returned to Tyler one final time. "You're going to leave my sister alone." Not a threat anymore. A conclusion. Marcus continued. "You're going to tell your friends to leave her alone." Another pause. "And you're going to remember this conversation every time you think intimidation makes you powerful." Tyler said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. For the first time in his privileged life, somebody had looked directly through the social mask he depended on. And shown absolutely no fear of what was underneath it. Tyler Mercer stood frozen long after Marcus stopped speaking. The silence around them no longer felt temporary. It felt decisive. For years, Tyler had survived conflict the same way he survived everything else, through pressure, image, and the confidence that eventually people would back down first. Teachers backed down. Administrators backed down. Students definitely backed down. But Marcus Brooks hadn't moved an inch psychologically since arriving. And that terrified him more with every passing second. Nia remained near the dorm entrance watching carefully, her pulse finally slowing now that the immediate danger had passed. But even from a distance, she could feel the tension still hanging in the air between the two men. Marcus wasn't emotional. Tyler was. That imbalance mattered. Because emotional people make unpredictable decisions once their pride starts collapsing. Tyler glanced around quickly, finally noticing that almost all of his friends had disappeared. The few remaining stood several yards back now, pretending not to be involved anymore. Abandoned. That realization humiliated him more than Marcus's words had. He looked back at Marcus, desperate to reclaim even a fragment of control. "You think threatening me solves something?" he asked. Marcus answered calmly. "No." A pause. "I think accountability solves things." That word hit Tyler strangely. Accountability. Not punishment. Not violence. Something about Marcus's tone made it clear he wasn't interested in intimidation for ego. He wasn't trying to win the interaction emotionally. He was establishing boundaries. Permanent ones. Tyler laughed weakly, trying to force confidence back into his voice. "You don't belong on this campus." Marcus studied him for a moment. Then quietly replied, People like you count on that. Tyler frowned slightly. Marcus continued. You rely on environments where nobody interrupts behavior early enough. A pause. Where reputation protects you. Another pause. Where targets stay isolated. The words felt surgical. Marcus wasn't arguing anymore. He was exposing structure. And Tyler hated that feeling because deep down he recognized pieces of himself in everything Marcus said. Nia slowly stepped closer now, sensing the confrontation beginning to shift away from immediate danger into something deeper and more uncomfortable. Tyler noticed her movement instantly. His expression hardened again slightly, pride struggling desperately to survive. You really needed your brother to save you. He muttered toward her. Nia stopped walking. Before she could answer, Marcus spoke first. No. Tyler looked at him. Marcus's expression remained perfectly controlled. She needed you to act like a decent human being. The sentence landed harder than any insult could have. Because it removed Tyler's fantasy entirely. This wasn't about Marcus being some aggressive protector stepping into harmless college drama. This was about Tyler failing a very basic standard of human behavior. And everyone standing there knew it now. Tyler's face reddened again. You're twisting everything. Marcus answered immediately. No. Then came another silence. But this one felt different. Heavier. More reflective. Marcus finally glanced toward Nia again. You okay to go inside now? She nodded slowly. But before turning away, she looked directly at Tyler for the first time since Marcus arrived. And something about her expression unsettled him deeply. Because she didn't look scared anymore. She looked disappointed. That was somehow worse. Tyler opened his mouth again, desperate to recover something. Anything. But Marcus spoke before he could. You know what your real problem is. Tyler frowned. Marcus's eyes stayed locked on him. You've confused fear with respect for so long that you can't tell the difference anymore. Those words cut deeper than Tyler expected. Because, suddenly the entire night looked different through that lens. The girls who avoided him. The students who stayed quiet around him. The professors who tolerated his behavior. The campus staff who ignored complaints. Had any of that ever actually been respect? Or had people simply learned it was easier not to challenge him? The thought hit harder than he wanted to admit. Marcus could see it happening. The internal shift. The discomfort. And unlike Tyler, Marcus understood something important about pressure. Sometimes silence forces people to confront themselves more brutally than shouting ever could. A cold wind moved across the campus walkway as distant music echoed from another frat party somewhere across the university grounds. The contrast felt surreal now. Students were still partying, laughing, drinking, completely unaware that only a short distance away, someone's entire perception of himself was quietly collapsing. Marcus finally stepped back fully. The movement immediately changed the atmosphere again. Not safer. Just final. This conversation is over, he said calmly. Tyler instinctively nodded before realizing he had done it. That frightened him more than anything else tonight. Because for the first time in his life, obedience had happened automatically. Marcus turned toward Nia. Let's go. She moved beside him immediately. And together they started walking toward the dorm entrance without another word. Tyler stood there motionless watching them leave. Every instinct screamed at him to say something aggressive. To regain face. To reassert control. But another instinct, one far older and more primal, warned him not to. Because deep down, Tyler finally understood something that privilege had protected him from learning for years. There are some people in this world who don't care about your status, your money, or your social power. And those are often the most dangerous people to provoke. Marcus and Nia reached the dorm doors. Just before stepping inside, Marcus paused briefly without turning around. Then he said one final sentence into the cold night air. If I were you. A pause. I'd spend a long time thinking about the difference between getting away with something. Another pause. And deserving to. Then the doors closed behind them. leaving Tyler Mercer alone outside with a feeling he had never truly experienced before. Consequences beginning before punishment even arrived. The dorm lobby felt unnaturally warm after the cold tension outside. Nia walked beside Marcus in silence as students passed around them laughing, checking phones, arguing about parties and assignments, completely unaware that only moments earlier, the atmosphere outside had nearly turned dangerous. Marcus noticed everything automatically: exits, security cameras, crowd density, potential threats. Years of military conditioning had made situational awareness permanent. He no longer turned it on. It simply existed in him constantly, quietly processing the world in layers deeper than most people ever noticed. But tonight, his attention kept returning to one thing: Nia's silence. She pressed the elevator button calmly, but Marcus could see the exhaustion underneath her composure now that the immediate threat had passed. Her shoulders remained tense, her breathing still slightly shallow. Fear after survival always reveals itself slowly. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside alone. Only then did Marcus finally ask the question he'd been holding back. How long? Nia stared ahead at the closing doors. Marcus, how long have they been bothering you? His tone stayed calm, but she knew him too well not to hear the anger carefully restrained underneath it. Nia exhaled quietly. A while. Marcus looked at her. How long is a while? She hesitated. That hesitation answered enough by itself. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. Months. Maybe longer. The elevator hummed softly upward. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react like this, Nia admitted quietly. Marcus answered immediately. No. She looked at him. I'm reacting like this because you didn't tell me. The words weren't harsh. That somehow made them heavier. Nia rubbed her hands together nervously. It wasn't always serious, she said. At first it was just comments. Then rumors. Then little things. Marcus stayed silent, waiting. That was another thing military training had sharpened in him, the ability to let silence pull truth forward naturally. Nia looked down briefly. I kept thinking it would stop. Marcus already knew that feeling. Targets often normalize escalation gradually because acknowledging danger fully becomes emotionally exhausting. Human beings adapt to pressure far more than they realize. But predators depend on that adaptation. What changed tonight? He asked quietly. Nia swallowed. They were drunk. A pause. And Tyler's been getting more aggressive lately. Marcus's eyes hardened slightly. Explain. Nia leaned back against the elevator wall. He started acting like I owed him attention, she said quietly. Like ignoring him insulted him somehow. Marcus didn't interrupt. He'd show up places I studied. Make comments when people were around. Act charming enough that nobody else noticed how weird it actually was. The elevator doors opened onto her floor. Neither moved immediately. Nia continued softly. And when I still ignored him. Another pause. He got worse. Marcus felt anger rise sharply in his chest now. Not explosive anger. Focused anger. The dangerous kind. Because he had seen this behavioral pattern before. Different environments. Different men. Same psychology. Control through pressure. Testing boundaries. Escalation after rejection. The elevator doors started closing again before Marcus pressed the open button automatically. Nia finally stepped out into the hallway. Marcus followed silently beside her. The dorm floor was mostly quiet now. A few distant voices behind closed doors. Television sounds somewhere far down the hall. Normal college life continuing while something much darker existed quietly underneath it. Nia unlocked her room slowly. Before entering, she looked at Marcus carefully. You can't do anything crazy. Marcus almost smiled at that. Almost. What counts as crazy? I'm serious. So am I. Nia shook her head tiredly. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. Marcus leaned lightly against the wall beside her door. No, he said calmly. You didn't tell me because you've spent too much time convincing yourself surviving something means tolerating it. That sentence hit her harder than she expected. Because part of her knew it was true. Marcus continued quietly. You changed your routines. Nia looked away. You minimized behavior. Silence. You adapted to intimidation. Another pause. And somewhere along the way, you started treating that as normal. Nia felt emotion tightening in her chest now, not fear anymore, but exhaustion finally losing its grip enough to become visible. You don't understand what this campus is like, she said quietly. People like Tyler don't get punished here. Marcus studied her face carefully. Then asked something unexpected. How many girls? Nia frowned slightly. What? How many other girls has he done this to? The question hung heavily in the hallway. Because suddenly this wasn't just about Nia anymore. She hesitated too long. Marcus noticed immediately. Nia, she exhaled slowly. I don't know. That answer told him everything. Marcus looked down the quiet hallway for a few seconds without speaking. And in that silence, something inside him shifted. Because earlier tonight, this had been about protecting his sister. Now, it was becoming about something much larger. Patterns, behavior, systems protecting people who escalated because nobody interrupted them early enough. Marcus had spent over a decade dealing with dangerous men professionally. And one truth stayed consistent across every environment. People rarely become predators suddenly. They become predators gradually, while everyone around them keeps calling the warning signs harmless. Nia unlocked her door fully this time. You're thinking too hard, she muttered. Marcus looked back at her. No, he said quietly. I'm thinking exactly hard enough. That answer unsettled her, because she recognized that tone. It meant Marcus had already started connecting pieces together internally. Strategizing, assessing. And when Marcus Brooks started assessing people seriously, things usually changed very quickly afterward. Nia's dorm room was small, quiet, and dimly lit by the soft glow of a desk lamp near the window. Textbooks covered half the desk, along with highlighted notes, coffee cups, and overdue exhaustion disguised as productivity. Marcus noticed all of it immediately. The organized stress, the overworked routine, the signs of someone carrying pressure alone for too long. Nia set her backpack down slowly while Marcus remained near the door for a moment, silently observing the room the same way he observed everything else. Nothing in his posture looked relaxed. That worried her. You can sit down, she said quietly. Marcus finally moved toward the chair near the desk but didn't fully settle into it. Years in the military had conditioned him to remain partially alert even in safe environments. His eyes drifted briefly toward the window overlooking campus before returning to his sister. You haven't been sleeping properly, he said. Nia frowned. How would you know that? Marcus shrugged slightly. You have stress shadows under your eyes. She rolled her eyes weakly. That sounds creepy. It's observational. It's annoying. For the first time all night, a faint smile almost appeared on Marcus's face. Almost. Then it disappeared again just as quickly. Because the weight of what happened outside still lingered heavily in the room. Nia sat on the edge of her bed quietly. You really scared them. Marcus looked at her calmly. That wasn't the goal. Then what was? A pause. Interrupting escalation. That answer sounded so clinical that Nia stared at him for a second. You talk like a military report. Marcus leaned back slightly. That's because emotional people misunderstand dangerous situations. Nia shook her head. No, emotional people survive them too. That response made Marcus pause. Because she wasn't wrong. He looked at her more carefully now, not as the younger sister he instinctively wanted to protect, but as someone who had been enduring pressure alone for longer than he realized. How bad has it actually gotten? He asked quietly. Nia hesitated again. Marcus noticed immediately. That hesitation was becoming a pattern tonight. Finally she spoke. They posted fake stuff online about me. Marcus's expression hardened slightly. What kind of stuff? Rumors. A pause. Things designed to embarrass me. Marcus remained silent. Somebody edited pictures once. That sentence changed the atmosphere instantly. Marcus's eyes locked onto her. What? Nia looked down. It spread around campus for a few days. Who did it? She shook her head slowly. No proof. Marcus studied her carefully. But you know. Silence. That was answer enough. Marcus leaned forward now, elbows resting lightly on his knees. Why didn't you report it? Nia laughed quietly. Not because anything was funny. Because the question felt naive. To who? Marcus frowned. The university. They protect donors, Marcus. Another pause. Tyler's father basically owns half the business school. Marcus said nothing, but internally, pieces were connecting rapidly now. Influence. Lack of accountability. Escalating behavior. Institutional protection. He had seen systems like this before, places where certain people learned consequences moved slower for them than for everyone else. Those environments always produced the same result eventually. Someone went too far. Nia looked toward the window quietly. At first I thought ignoring it would make me less interesting to them. Marcus answered immediately. Predators don't lose interest because targets stay quiet. The word predators again. Nia noticed it this time. You really think they're dangerous? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked another question. How many times have they followed you? Nia's silence stretched too long. Marcus felt cold anger settle deeper in his chest. Nia, a few. How many? I don't know. That meant many. Marcus rubbed his jaw slowly, thinking. What about physical contact? Nia looked uncomfortable now. Nothing serious. That wasn't an answer. Marcus's voice became quieter. What happened? Nia exhaled sharply. One of Tyler's friends grabbed my wrist at a party last month. Marcus froze completely still. The room suddenly felt smaller. What did you just say? Nia immediately regretted mentioning it. It wasn't like, did he touch you? Yes, but. Marcus stood up instantly. Not dramatically, but fast enough to change the entire energy in the room. Nia's heart tightened immediately. Marcus. His back was partially turned now as he stared out the dorm window toward campus lights glowing in the distance. When? Last month. And you said nothing. Nia stood slowly too. I handled it. Marcus looked at her over his shoulder. No, he said quietly. You survived it. The difference between those two words hit her hard. Marcus continued staring out at campus. To everyone else, Westbridge probably looked peaceful tonight. Safe, prestigious, elite. But Marcus had spent too many years dealing with violence to trust appearances. Dangerous behavior always hides best in places convinced danger doesn't exist there. What happened after he grabbed you? Marcus asked. Nia crossed her arms tightly. I pulled away. And they laughed. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Not out of emotion, calculation, self-control. Because now his mind wasn't processing isolated harassment anymore. It was processing escalation timelines, behavioral progression, boundary testing, and the picture forming in his head was getting darker. Nia stepped closer carefully. You can't treat this like one of your military situations. Marcus opened his eyes again slowly. That's exactly the problem. She frowned slightly. What does that mean? Marcus turned fully toward her now. It means people keep dismissing behavior until it becomes severe enough that everyone suddenly pretends the warning signs weren't obvious. The room went quiet again. Nia hated that part, because deep down, she knew he was right. Marcus looked at her carefully. You know what bothers me most? She didn't answer. You stopped expecting protection. That sentence landed with painful accuracy. Because somewhere over the past months, Nia really had stopped believing anyone on campus would meaningfully help her if things escalated. She adapted instead, minimized, avoided, survived quietly. Marcus saw the realization on her face. And it made something inside him even colder. Because no sister of his should ever have learned to normalize fear just to continue her education peacefully. Outside, Distant music from frat houses echoed faintly through the night again. Marcus listened to it for a moment, then said something so quietly Nia almost missed it. They think nobody's watching them. And somehow, the way he said it sounded less like anger and more like a warning. Nia didn't answer immediately, because something in Marcus's voice had shifted. Not louder, not harsher, just more certain. That kind of certainty always came before action, and she knew him well enough to recognize it. "Marcus," she said carefully, "what are you thinking right now?" Marcus kept his eyes on the window for a few seconds longer before replying. "I'm thinking about patterns." Nia frowned slightly. "Patterns." He turned back toward her. "Behavior doesn't appear randomly. It escalates, step by step. And when people are allowed to escalate without interruption," he paused, "they start believing there are no limits." Nia crossed her arms tighter. "You're talking like this is some kind of operation." Marcus didn't deny it. "I'm talking like someone who has seen what happens when warning signs are ignored." Silence stretched between them again. Outside, campus life continued as if nothing had changed. Somewhere in the distance, laughter echoed. A car door slammed. Someone shouted across a parking lot. Normal life layered over something far more unstable. Nia sat down slowly on the edge of her bed again, suddenly feeling the emotional weight of everything catching up. "I didn't want you involved," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her. "I was already involved the moment it started affecting you." "That's not fair. It's reality." Nia shook her head slightly. "You always do this." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Do what?" "Turn everything into something serious." That actually made Marcus pause. Not defensively, reflectively, because he understood what she meant. His entire life had trained him to treat small indicators as early warnings. In his world, ignoring small problems usually led to irreversible outcomes, but Nia lived in a world where not everything required escalation. At least, that was the idea. Marcus spoke more softly now. "I don't turn things serious," he said. "I respond when they already are." Nia didn't reply, because she couldn't fully argue with that. A long moment passed. Then Marcus asked quietly, "Do you trust me?" The question shifted the energy instantly. Nia looked up at him. "Of course I trust you." "Then trust this," he said. Her stomach tightened slightly. Marcus continued, "This didn't start tonight." Nia frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus turned slightly toward the door again, as if visualizing everything that had happened earlier outside. "This started the first time they decided they could approach you without consequences." Nia opened her mouth but stopped, because she knew exactly what he meant. Marcus continued, "And it continued because nothing stopped them early enough to make them reconsider." Silence again, this time heavier, more uncomfortable. Nia stood up slowly. "So what are you saying?" she asked quietly. "That I should have fought them? That I should have caused a scene every time something happened?" Marcus shook his head once. "No." A pause. "I'm saying the environment learned your boundaries were flexible." That sentence hit differently, because it removed blame without removing responsibility. It wasn't saying she caused it. It was saying the situation adapted around her silence. Nia looked away. "I didn't know what else to do." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know." That answer softened the moment slightly. But only slightly. Because Marcus wasn't finished thinking. He walked slowly back toward the desk and leaned against it, arms folded. "What concerns me now," he said, "is that Tyler Mercer believes tonight ended with a warning." Nia looked at him quickly. "Isn't that what you wanted?" Marcus shook his head. "No." A pause. "I wanted understanding." Nia frowned. "Understanding of what?" Marcus looked at her directly. "That actions have consequences before they become irreversible." The room fell quiet again. Nia sat back down, overwhelmed now not by fear, but by the weight of how differently Marcus processed the entire situation. For her, tonight had been an escape. For Marcus, it was an evaluation. A system analysis. And that difference scared her more than she wanted to admit. Because she knew Marcus didn't leave things unresolved when he identified a pattern like this. After a moment, she spoke softly. "You're not going to do anything, right?" Marcus didn't answer immediately, and that hesitation alone made her stomach tighten. Finally he said, "I'm going to make sure it doesn't continue." Nia stood up again immediately. "That's not what I asked." Marcus met her gaze. "I know." Another pause. Then he added quietly, "But it is what's necessary." Nia shook her head slightly. "You can't just decide that." Marcus's voice stayed calm. "I'm not deciding anything. I'm responding to what already exists." Nia stepped closer. "This is college drama, Marcus." "It's not. It stopped being college drama when they started targeting you specifically," he interrupted gently but firmly. The room went quiet again. Nia could feel the line forming now. Between protection and escalation. She spoke carefully. "Just promise me you won't make it worse." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then said, "I'm not interested in making it worse." A pause. "I'm interested in making it end." That final sentence hung in the air longer than anything else that night. Outside, the campus lights continued glowing. But somewhere within that calm exterior, something had already begun shifting. Not loudly, not visibly, just quietly, like pressure building behind a sealed door. And Marcus Brooks had already started deciding exactly where that pressure would eventually go. Nia didn't sleep that night. Neither did Marcus. The difference was that Nia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the sidewalk outside her dorm, while Marcus sat silently in the chair near the window, watching the campus below as if it were a map he was slowly learning by memory. Neither of them said much after their last conversation. Some things don't need more words. They just need time to settle into reality. But reality was already shifting. Because somewhere across campus, Tyler Mercer wasn't sleeping either. He was sitting in his off-campus apartment with a half-empty drink in his hand, staring at his phone, replaying the moment Marcus stepped between him and Nia over and over again. And for the first time in a long time, Tyler wasn't laughing. His friends had already stopped answering his messages. Not because anything had been formally decided, but because social instincts are faster than loyalty when danger becomes uncertain. One by one, they had started distancing themselves. That was the part Tyler couldn't tolerate. He wasn't used to being the one people avoided. Especially not after a situation he believed he still controlled. So he replayed it again. Marcus's voice. Calm. Controlled. Unshaken. "I know exactly what you are." Tyler tightened his jaw. "Who the hell does he think he is?" he muttered to himself. But even as he said it, he knew that question wasn't the one bothering him. The real question was simpler. Why hadn't Marcus been afraid? At Westbridge, fear was currency. It was the invisible system that kept people in line. Professors adjusted grading curves quietly. Students avoided confrontation. Staff overlooked behavior they should have reported. Everyone understood the hierarchy, even if no one admitted it openly. Tyler had always operated at the top of that system. But Marcus hadn't even acknowledged it existed. That alone made Tyler uneasy. Back in the dorm, Marcus finally stood up. Nia noticed immediately. "You're leaving?" she asked quietly. Marcus glanced at her. Not far. That answer wasn't comforting. She sat up in bed. "Marcus." He paused near the door. "I just need to confirm something." Nia frowned slightly. "Confirm what?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Because he wasn't entirely sure how to explain it in a way that wouldn't alarm her more. Instead, he said, "Sleep." That wasn't an instruction. It was avoidance. And Nia recognized it instantly. Marcus opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The dorm was quiet now. Late-night silence had fully settled in. A few distant footsteps. The hum of vending machines. The soft echo of elevators moving somewhere down the hall. Marcus walked with purpose. Not fast. Not rushed. Controlled. Each step deliberate. His mind was already organizing information from earlier. Names, behaviors, patterns, locations. He stopped briefly near the exit of the dorm building, looking out at the campus again. From here, everything still looked normal. Students were still safe inside their rooms. Security patrols were still making slow rounds. The campus still believed it was orderly. But Marcus had learned long ago that surface order meant nothing when underlying behavior patterns were ignored. He stepped outside. Cold air hit him immediately. He adjusted nothing, didn't react to it, just kept walking. Meanwhile, across campus, Tyler's phone buzzed again. A message. Unknown number. You still up? Tyler stared at it for a moment. Then smirked faintly. Finally. Someone not scared. He typed back immediately. Yeah. The response came almost instantly. Meet me at Delta parking lot. Tyler frowned. Who is this? No reply. Just a location pin. Tyler hesitated. For a brief moment, instinct told him not to go. But ego is a powerful override system. Especially when humiliation hasn't been processed yet. He grabbed his jacket and stood up. Fine, he muttered. I'll see who's talking big now. And just like that, Tyler Mercer walked out into the night believing he was going to reclaim control of a situation that had already moved far beyond his understanding. What he didn't know was that Marcus Brooks had already identified something far more important than Tyler's pride. He had identified the structure behind it. And structures, once understood, don't stay standing for long. Tyler Mercer arrived at the Delta parking lot with the kind of confidence that only survived on delayed consequences. The area was mostly empty at this hour. A few scattered cars, dim overhead lights casting long shadows across the pavement. The kind of place students usually avoided unless they had no other choice. He stopped near the center and looked around. All right, he muttered. Where are you? For a moment, there was nothing. Only silence. Then his phone buzzed again. Another message. Turn around. Tyler scoffed. This is stupid, he said under his breath. But he turned anyway. And that was when he saw him. Marcus stood a short distance behind one of the parked vehicles, completely still. No dramatic entrance. No confrontation already in motion. Just presence. The same controlled stillness Tyler had felt earlier outside the dorm. But something was different now. Marcus wasn't observing like before. He was deciding. Tyler forced a laugh. You really dragged me out here for another lecture. He called out. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He walked forward slowly, stopping at a distance that didn't feel accidental. It wasn't a lecture, Marcus said calmly. Tyler crossed his arms. Then what was it? A warning you ignored. Tyler rolled his eyes. Listen, man, whatever you think you saw earlier. I didn't think, Marcus interrupted. A pause. I observed. That distinction made Tyler uncomfortable. Because observation implies accuracy. And accuracy removes excuses. Tyler shifted his weight slightly. Look, I don't know what your deal is with Nia, but... Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. That's your first mistake tonight. Tyler frowned. What? Assuming this is about me. The words hung in the air. Tyler hesitated. Marcus stepped slightly closer. This stopped being about you the moment your behavior crossed a line. Tyler felt irritation building again. I didn't do anything illegal. Marcus looked at him directly. That's your standard. Silence. Marcus continued. Not legality. Not harm. Just what you can get away with. Tyler opened his mouth but closed it again. Because that was uncomfortably close to accurate. Marcus nodded slightly, as if confirming something internally. You've been operating in an environment where accountability arrives too late to matter. Tyler laughed nervously. You talk like you're some kind of judge. Marcus answered immediately. No. A pause. I'm someone who recognizes patterns before they become casualties. That word landed heavily. Casualties. Tyler's expression shifted slightly. This is insane, he muttered. We're talking about college drama. Marcus tilted his head. No. Another pause. We're talking about escalation. Tyler felt something tighten in his chest again. Escalation, he repeated. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Yes. A step forward. You followed her. Another step. You isolated her. Another step. You escalated when she didn't respond the way you wanted. Tyler's breathing became slightly uneven now. Marcus stopped a few feet away. And tonight, he said quietly, you reached the point where you believed consequences wouldn't come at all. Tyler tried to steady himself. You're making this way bigger than it is. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then said, no. A pause. I'm making it accurate. That word again. Accurate. Not emotional. Not exaggerated. Tyler suddenly realized something unsettling. Marcus wasn't debating him. He was categorizing him. Like a problem already solved. Tyler took a step back instinctively. Look, I don't know what you think you're doing here. Marcus interrupted calmly. I'm ending a pattern. Tyler frowned. What pattern? Marcus's expression didn't change. The belief that you can apply pressure to someone repeatedly until they break or comply. Silence. That belief doesn't end well when it meets someone willing to intervene. Tyler's voice rose slightly now. So what, you're threatening me again? Marcus shook his head once. No. A pause. I'm explaining reality. That made Tyler laugh again, but it sounded strained this time. Reality. You show up out of nowhere and start talking like you control everything. Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked past Tyler for a moment, as if assessing the broader environment. Then back at him. I don't control anything, Marcus said quietly. Another pause. I respond to what already exists. Tyler felt a flicker of something uncomfortable again. Because Marcus wasn't improvising. He wasn't reacting emotionally. He was operating from something structured. Tyler swallowed. You think I'm just going to disappear because you told me to stay away? Marcus answered immediately. No. A pause. I think you're going to decide whether you understand consequences now. He stepped slightly closer. Or later. That was the moment Tyler realized something fundamental had changed since earlier. Outside the dorm, Marcus had been a warning. Here, he felt like the next stage of something already in motion. Tyler tried to regain composure. You're not even a student here, he said quickly. You don't belong in this situation. Marcus studied him quietly. That assumption is why people like you miscalculate. Tyler frowned. What does that even mean? Marcus's voice stayed steady. It means you believe relevance is required for intervention. A pause. It isn't. Silence again. Longer this time. Heavier. And in that silence, Tyler's confidence finally began to fracture in a way it hadn't before. Because this wasn't intimidation anymore. It wasn't anger. It was inevitability being explained calmly. Marcus finally took a half step back. This is the only conversation I'm going to have with you, he said. Tyler hesitated. Marcus continued. You will leave Nia alone. A pause. You will ensure your friends do the same. Another pause. And you will correct your behavior before someone else corrects it for you. Tyler stared at him. For the first time that night, he didn't respond immediately. Because something about Marcus's certainty made it clear. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a final notice. And Tyler Mercer was suddenly realizing he might not be the one holding power in this situation at all. Tyler Mercer stood there longer than he should have. Not because he didn't understand what Marcus had said. But because his mind refused to accept it as final. People like Tyler don't process boundaries easily. They test them, push against them, reinterpret them, anything except accept them as absolute. And right now, every instinct he had built his entire life on was fighting to regain control of the moment. Marcus, however, didn't move. He simply waited, not impatiently, not aggressively, just steadily, like someone who already knew how the situation would end, regardless of how long Tyler delayed it. Tyler finally let out a short, humorless laugh. So that's it, he said. You show up, give me a speech, and expect me to just what? Obey you. Marcus answered without hesitation. I don't expect anything. A pause. I'm telling you what happens next. That sentence landed differently. Because Marcus wasn't asking for agreement. He wasn't seeking validation. He was describing consequences as if they were already in motion. Tyler shook his head. You really think you're untouchable because you used to be in the military or whatever? Marcus tilted his head slightly. That's your interpretation. Tyler's voice sharpened. People like you always think intimidation works outside your world. Marcus stepped slightly closer, not enough to threaten, just enough to close distance. This isn't intimidation, he said calmly. A pause. This is intervention. Tyler's jaw tightened again, but something was changing in his posture now. Less confidence, more defensiveness, because the usual tools weren't working. Not charm, not status, not deflection. Marcus wasn't engaging in any of those systems. Tyler looked away briefly, scanning the empty parking lot as if expecting backup to appear. But there was nothing. No friends, no crowd, no audience, just him and Marcus. And that realization started to sink in. Marcus noticed it. Your friends aren't coming, he said quietly. Tyler snapped his attention back. What? Marcus continued evenly. They already made their decision earlier tonight. That hit harder than expected. Because it was true. Tyler had felt it in the dorm parking lot earlier, the way they separated, the way they avoided standing beside him, the way laughter disappeared when Marcus arrived. He just hadn't admitted it yet. Tyler exhaled sharply. You're trying way too hard to make yourself important in something you don't understand. Marcus didn't react to the insult. He rarely did. Instead, he said something quieter. I understand escalation. Tyler frowned. What does that even mean? Marcus looked at him directly. It means I know what happens when someone believes there are no consequences for repeated behavior. A pause. It doesn't stay small. Tyler felt irritation and unease mixing now. You keep acting like I did something serious. Marcus answered immediately. You did something predictable. That word again. Predictable. Tyler hated it. Because it removed uniqueness from his actions. Reduced him to behavior instead of identity. Marcus continued. You tested boundaries. A pause. You escalated when you weren't stopped. Another pause. And you repeated it because there were no immediate consequences. Tyler shook his head. You're insane if you think this is some kind of. Marcus interrupted. It's not a theory. Silence. It's pattern recognition. The parking lot felt colder now. Even the distant campus noise seemed further away. Tyler's breathing became slightly uneven again, though he tried hiding it. Marcus took one step back. That small movement shifted everything again. Because it signaled something unexpected. Conclusion. Tyler frowned. What are you doing? Marcus's voice stayed steady. This is done. Tyler blinked. What? Marcus looked at him calmly. You've been given every opportunity to understand boundaries voluntarily. A pause. You've chosen not to. Tyler's stomach tightened slightly. Marcus continued. So now the outcome shifts away from conversation. Tyler felt a surge of panic rise quickly now. Wait, what does that mean? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked past Tyler toward the empty lot again, as if confirming something internally. Then back at him. It means you will no longer have the same access to her life that you've been taking for granted. Tyler stepped forward slightly. You can't just decide that. Marcus met his gaze. I'm not deciding it. A pause. I'm enforcing it. That word changed the air completely. Tyler stared at him, trying to find a crack in the logic, a flaw, an opening. But Marcus wasn't arguing. He was finalizing. Tyler's voice rose slightly. You're not even supposed to be here. Marcus answered quietly. And yet I am. Silence. Longer now. Heavier. Tyler's frustration started breaking through into something messier. So what, you're going to follow me around or something? Marcus shook his head once. No. A pause. You misunderstand. Tyler frowned. Marcus's voice stayed calm. I don't need to follow you. Another pause. I just need to make sure you understand the line you crossed. That sentence lingered in the air longer than anything else tonight. Because Tyler finally understood something he didn't want to admit. Marcus wasn't trying to scare him into compliance. He was documenting him into consequence. And somewhere, deep inside Tyler's mind, a very uncomfortable realization began forming. This wasn't the end of a confrontation. It was the beginning of something he no longer controlled. Tyler Mercer stood in the parking lot long after Marcus stopped speaking, as if waiting for the situation to rewind itself back into something familiar. But nothing rewound. The silence stayed in place. Heavy. Final. Marcus was no longer looking at him the same way either. That was what unsettled Tyler most. Earlier, Marcus had been assessing him. Now, Marcus looked finished with him. Like the evaluation had already been completed somewhere internally, and Tyler had failed without ever being told there was a test. Tyler forced a nervous laugh. You really think you can just walk in here and change how things work for me? Marcus didn't react immediately, then calmly said, I'm not changing how things work. A pause. I'm removing your assumption that they don't apply to you. Tyler felt something tighten in his chest again. Because that wasn't intimidation, it was correction, and correction implied authority. Tyler shook his head quickly. You don't even go here. You don't know anything about what I've built. Marcus tilted his head slightly. That's where you're wrong. Tyler frowned. Marcus continued evenly. I don't need to know what you've built. A pause. I only need to observe how you behave when you think there are no consequences. The words hit harder than expected. Because Tyler suddenly realized Marcus wasn't interested in reputation, image, or social structure. He was focused purely on behavior under low accountability conditions. And Tyler had been operating in exactly that environment for years. Marcus took a slow step to the side now, subtly changing his position, not threatening, just repositioning like someone preparing to leave. Tyler noticed immediately. Where are you going? He asked quickly. Marcus glanced at him. This is over. Tyler's voice sharpened. No, it's not. Marcus stopped walking, looked back, and for the first time, there was something closer to finality in his expression. Yes, he said quietly. It is. Tyler shook his head, frustration breaking through again. You can't just show up, say a few things, and think I'm going to disappear from her life. Marcus studied him for a moment, then asked calmly, why do you believe persistence is the same as permission? That question confused Tyler for a second. Marcus continued before he could answer. You've mistaken access for entitlement. A pause. An entitlement for inevitability. Tyler's jaw tightened. You're talking in circles. Marcus shook his head. No. A pause. You're just hearing structure for the first time. That line landed strangely. Because Tyler suddenly couldn't tell if Marcus was insulting him or explaining something fundamental about how Marcus viewed people like him. Marcus turned slightly again, now clearly preparing to leave. But before he did, he added something quieter. This doesn't escalate further. Tyler frowned. What does that mean? Marcus met his eyes one last time. It means you don't get another warning phase. Silence. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Marcus continued. You either adjust your behavior, or life adjusts it for you. Tyler felt irritation flare again, mixed with unease. You keep talking like I'm some criminal. Marcus answered immediately. I'm not labeling you. A pause. I'm describing trajectory. That word stuck. Trajectory. Not identity. Not morality. Direction. Tyler opened his mouth, but nothing came out this time. Because Marcus had stopped arguing with him entirely. And being ignored felt worse than being threatened. Marcus finally turned away fully. Started walking. Tyler's voice snapped behind him instinctively. You think I'm just going to let this go? Marcus didn't turn around, but his voice carried clearly back across the empty parking lot. You already have. That sentence froze Tyler completely. Marcus continued walking without hesitation. No urgency. No anger. Just completion. Tyler stood there alone for several seconds, breathing unevenly now, staring at the space Marcus had just left. Trying to rebuild confidence. Trying to reclaim the version of himself that worked before tonight. But something had changed. Not externally. Internally. Because for the first time in his life, Tyler wasn't wondering how to win the situation. He was wondering whether he had already lost it without realizing when the turning point happened. And far across campus, Marcus Brooks was already done thinking about Tyler Mercer. Because in his mind, Tyler wasn't the problem anymore. He was just one example of it. Marcus walked across the quiet campus with the same controlled pace he carried through every dangerous environment he had ever entered. No wasted movement, no visible emotion, but internally, his mind was active, processing, organizing, because Tyler Mercer no longer concerned him as an individual. What concerned him was the system surrounding him. The protection, the normalization, the way everyone around Tyler had slowly adapted to behavior they should have interrupted much earlier. Marcus had seen that exact pattern before in completely different worlds. Military compounds, foreign villages, intelligence briefings, internal investigations. Different locations. Same psychology. People ignore warning signs because acknowledging them really feels inconvenient. Until suddenly the consequences become impossible to ignore. Marcus stopped briefly near the center of campus. The university looked peaceful at night. Historic buildings lit by warm lamps. Perfect lawns. Banners celebrating leadership, excellence, integrity. The irony almost made him laugh. Because institutions loved words like integrity right up until those words threatened powerful people. His phone buzzed softly. "Nia, please tell me you're coming back." Marcus stared at the message for a moment before replying. Soon, 3 dots appeared instantly. Then another message. "You promised not to make this worse." Marcus looked down at the screen quietly. That depended entirely on how she defined worse. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and kept walking. Meanwhile, across campus, Tyler Mercer sat alone in his car gripping the steering wheel hard enough to whiten his knuckles. The parking lot confrontation kept replaying in his head over and over again. Not because Marcus threatened him physically. Because Marcus dismantled something psychological Tyler depended on. Certainty. For years, Tyler had operated under an invisible assumption that consequences belonged to other people. Even when problems appeared, connections handled them. Reputation softened them. Money delayed them. But Marcus behaved like someone completely disconnected from those systems. And that made him unpredictable. Tyler hated unpredictable people. His phone buzzed suddenly. "Ethan, one of the fraternity guys from earlier." Tyler answered immediately. "Where the hell were you?" Silence for a second. Then Ethan spoke carefully. "Bro, maybe you should chill for a while." Tyler's expression darkened instantly. "What? I'm serious." Tyler laughed sharply. "You too. Marcus isn't normal, man." That sentence irritated Tyler more than anything else tonight. What does that even mean? Ethan lowered his voice. The way he looked at everyone. A pause. "That guy's dangerous." Tyler scoffed immediately. "He's just trying to scare people." "No," Ethan said quietly. "That's the problem. I don't think he was trying." Silence. Tyler suddenly felt cold irritation spreading through him. Because even now, Marcus was still affecting the group psychologically despite not even being there anymore. That meant influence. And Tyler was used to controlling influence, not losing it. Ethan spoke again. "People are talking already." Tyler frowned. "About what?" "The dorm thing." Tyler's stomach tightened. "How?" "Somebody posted part of it." That changed everything instantly. Tyler sat up straighter. "What do you mean posted it?" "There's video." The blood drained slowly from Tyler's face. "Not the entire interaction. Please, not the entire interaction." "What video?" Ethan hesitated. "Enough." Tyler immediately unlocked his phone and opened social media. His chest tightened harder with every second. There it was. A short clip. Blurry. Shaky. But recognizable. Marcus standing calmly in front of him outside the dorm while the frat group slowly backed away. And worse than the visuals was the caption. Westbridge frat boys corner student until her brother arrives. Thousands of views already. Comments flooding in rapidly. Why were they surrounding her? That guy in black looks terrifying. Typical entitled frat behavior. Someone identify these dudes. Tyler's pulse spiked instantly. No, no, no. He refreshed again. More views. More comments. The situation was spreading too fast. His breathing became uneven now. Because for the first time, the environment itself was shifting. Publicly. Not privately handled. Not quietly buried. Visible. That terrified him. Meanwhile, Marcus finally returned to Nia's dorm building. As he stepped inside, he immediately noticed something different. Students were whispering, phones out, looking at screens, looking at each other. One student glanced at Marcus near the entrance, eyes widening slightly in recognition before quickly looking away. Marcus already understood. Something leaked. He reached the elevator silently. His phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Only one sentence. You should have stayed out of it. Marcus stared at the message calmly. No reaction. No surprise. Because threats rarely begin loudly. They begin indirectly first. Testing response. Testing pressure. Marcus deleted the message immediately. Then looked at his reflection briefly in the elevator doors. Completely calm. That was what made people misunderstand him. They thought calmness meant absence of danger. In reality, calmness often meant danger had already been measured. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped out slowly. And somewhere deep in his instincts, a realization settled fully into place. Tonight had already spread beyond a private incident. Now the university itself was becoming part of the story. And institutions were often far more dangerous than individuals once they realized exposure had begun. Nia opened the dorm room door before Marcus even knocked. You saw it? She asked immediately. Marcus stepped inside calmly. Yes. Her anxiety was obvious now. She held her phone tightly in one hand, social media feeds still open across the screen. The video clip had already spread far beyond campus circles. And it was still growing. I told you this would get worse, she said quietly. Marcus closed the door behind him. No, he replied calmly. This was already worse. Nia looked frustrated. You know what I mean. Marcus did. She meant visibility, exposure, attention. Most people feared attention because attention removes control over narrative. Once a situation becomes public, institutions stop focusing on truth first. They focus on damage management. Marcus sat down slowly near the desk again while Nia paced nervously across the room. The comments are insane, she muttered. People are identifying Tyler already. Someone recognized the fraternity. Marcus remained silent. That silence started irritating her. How are you this calm? He looked at her. Because panic doesn't improve outcomes. That's not normal. No, Marcus admitted quietly. It isn't. The honesty of that answer slowed her pacing slightly. Marcus glanced toward her phone. What's the university saying? Nothing yet. They will. Nia sat on the edge of the bed again. That's what scares me. Marcus studied her face carefully. Why? Because schools like this protect themselves first. Marcus nodded once. Accurate. Very accurate. He leaned back slightly in the chair. They'll attempt containment. Nia frowned. You say things like you've seen this before. Marcus looked toward the window briefly. I have. A pause. Different systems. Same behavior. Nia stared at him for a moment. Then quietly asked, how bad do you think this actually is? Marcus answered immediately. Bad enough that someone already tried to intimidate me. Nia froze. What? Marcus pulled out his phone calmly and showed her the deleted message notification screenshot he'd saved automatically earlier. You should have stayed out of it. Nia's stomach dropped instantly. Who sent that? Unknown number. Oh my God. Marcus's expression didn't change. It's predictable. That's not predictable, Marcus, that's threatening. He looked at her directly. Yes. A pause. And threats happen when pressure begins affecting reputation. Nia suddenly felt cold. Because Marcus wasn't reacting emotionally to the message at all. He was categorizing it, analyzing it. That made the situation feel even more serious somehow. You need to report that, she said quickly. Marcus shook his head once. Not yet. What do you mean not yet? Because I want to see whether pressure escalates further. Nia stared at him like he was insane. You sound like you're studying this. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Then quietly said, I am. Silence filled the room again. Heavy silence. The kind that forces realization slowly into place. Nia lowered her voice. You think Tyler sent it? Marcus considered the question carefully. No. That surprised her. You don't. Marcus shook his head again. Too emotional. What does that mean? It means Tyler reacts impulsively when pressured. That message was calculated. Nia felt another wave of unease. So someone else. Marcus nodded slightly. Possibly someone protecting the environment around him. That sentence chilled her more than the message itself. Because suddenly this didn't feel isolated anymore. It felt organized, structured. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, not an unknown number. A call. From a Westbridge University administrative office. Nia's eyes widened instantly. Marcus looked at the screen without answering immediately. They work fast, he muttered. Don't answer. Marcus looked at her calmly. Why? Because this is exactly what they do. They'll try to smooth everything over. Marcus accepted the call. Marcus Brooks speaking. A professional female voice answered immediately. Mr. Brooks, hello. My name is Denise Carter from Student Affairs. We'd appreciate the opportunity to discuss tonight's unfortunate misunderstanding. Marcus's expression hardened almost invisibly at one word. Misunderstanding. He leaned back slightly. What exactly was misunderstood? A brief pause on the line. We understand tensions escalated between students outside one of our residence halls. Marcus answered calmly. No. Another pause. A group of male students surrounded my sister after midnight. Silence. Then the administrator spoke more carefully. We're gathering information from all perspectives. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. There are not multiple perspectives on intimidation. Nia watched him closely now. The room itself seemed tighter somehow. The administrator continued diplomatically. Westbridge takes student safety extremely seriously. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. Interesting. Excuse me. Marcus's voice stayed perfectly calm. Because your campus environment suggests otherwise. Silence again. Longer this time. Nia could practically hear the administrator recalculating strategy through the phone. Finally. Mr. Brooks, perhaps we could arrange a formal meeting tomorrow. Marcus answered immediately. With legal representation present. That caught the administrator off guard. I'm sorry. You contacted me less than an hour after public exposure began, Marcus said evenly. That suggests institutional concern, not proactive protection. Another silence. Then carefully. You seem to be interpreting this situation adversarially. Marcus's eyes became colder. No, he said quietly. I'm interpreting it accurately. Nia felt chills hearing him repeat that word again. Accurately. Like he had already stripped the situation down to its real structure while everyone else was still trying to shape appearances. The administrator cleared her throat softly. We simply want to avoid unnecessary escalation. Marcus responded instantly. Then your concern should be the behavior that caused this. Silence. No response. Because there wasn't one. Finally Marcus ended the call calmly. We'll speak tomorrow. Then he hung up. The room stayed silent for several seconds afterward. Nia stared at him. What happens now? Marcus looked toward the dark campus outside the window. Then quietly said, now we find out whether the university is afraid of the truth. A pause. Or afraid of accountability. The campus woke up angry. Not loud angry. Controlled angry. The kind universities specialize in when public image starts slipping beyond containment. By sunrise, the video had spread far outside Westbridge. Students reposted it across platforms. Alumni pages picked it up. Local discussion forums exploded with arguments about privilege, harassment, race, and fraternity culture. And every hour the clip stayed online, the university lost more control over the narrative. Marcus noticed all of it before most people on campus were even awake. He sat near Nia's dorm window scrolling silently through posts, comments, and reactions while she slept for the first time all night. Exhaustion had finally overpowered anxiety around dawn. Marcus, meanwhile, operated perfectly fine on almost no sleep. Years of deployment had conditioned his body differently. His phone buzzed repeatedly now. Unknown numbers, emails, requests for statements. One local reporter already asking for comment. Marcus ignored all of them. Because media attention wasn't the priority yet. Structure was. And right now, Marcus was studying the university itself. Patterns, language, response timing, public relations behavior. Every institution under pressure reveals itself eventually through wording choices alone. At 8:12 a.m., Westbridge finally released an official statement online. Marcus read it once, then again more slowly. Westbridge University is aware of an incident involving students outside a residential facility. The university remains committed to maintaining a safe and inclusive environment while reviewing the matter thoroughly. Marcus stared at the screen expressionlessly. No mention of intimidation, no mention of harassment, no mention of accountability, only neutralized language designed to reduce legal exposure. Predictable, very predictable. Nia finally woke up groggily. "What time is it?" she murmured. "After 8. She sat up slowly, then immediately remembered everything. Her eyes widened. "Oh no." Marcus handed her coffee silently. She grabbed her phone and froze. The video views had doubled overnight. Comments flooded every platform now. Some supportive, some ugly, some openly racist, others demanding the fraternity be investigated. Nia's breathing tightened slightly. "This is insane." Marcus remained calm. "No," he said quietly. "This is exposure." She looked at him. "That's not better." "No," Marcus admitted. "It's just accurate." Again that word, accurate. Nia rubbed her forehead tiredly. "You really think the university cares about any of this?" Marcus answered immediately. "They care that people are watching." That distinction mattered. Institutions rarely respond fastest to morality. They respond fastest to visibility. A sharp knock suddenly hit the dorm door. Both of them looked up instantly. Marcus stood immediately. The knock came again, more controlled this time. Marcus moved toward the door carefully and opened it halfway. A middle-aged man in a tailored gray suit stood outside, flanked by another university official holding a tablet. Professional smiles. Tense eyes. "Mr. Brooks?" the man asked. Marcus didn't move. "Yes. My name is Richard Ellison, Dean of Student Affairs." Marcus studied him silently. Ellison extended a hand politely. Marcus ignored it. The dean lowered his hand smoothly without losing composure. "We'd appreciate a private conversation regarding tonight's events." Marcus corrected him instantly. "Last night's events." The dean smiled thinly. "Of course." Marcus looked at both officials carefully. Then asked, "Why are university administrators at a student dorm before 9 in the morning?" A brief silence. Ellison answered carefully. "We're attempting to resolve matters quickly and responsibly." Marcus leaned lightly against the doorframe. Responsible would have been addressing behavioral complaints before public exposure forced urgency. The dean's smile weakened slightly. Nia stood slowly behind Marcus now. The second official noticed her immediately. "Miss Brooks, the university wants to ensure you feel supported." Marcus spoke before she could respond. "Supported now." Another silence. The dean adjusted smoothly. The university takes these concerns very seriously. Marcus nodded once. Then you should have records. Ellison's expression changed slightly. What do you mean? Marcus's eyes stayed locked on him. My sister wasn't harassed for the first time yesterday. That sentence shifted the atmosphere instantly. Because now the university representatives understood something dangerous. This situation potentially had history. Documented history. Ignored history. The second official glanced nervously toward the dean. Marcus noticed immediately. So did Ellison. The dean recovered quickly. We'd prefer discussing specifics privately. Marcus answered calmly. We are discussing them privately. Ellison's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Then he lowered his voice slightly. Mr. Brooks, situations like this become complicated very quickly once social media becomes involved. Marcus looked at him steadily. No. A pause. They become visible. That sentence hit hard, because it exposed exactly what the dean was trying to manage. Visibility. Not truth. Not safety. Control. The dean shifted strategy again. We're concerned about misinformation spreading. Marcus answered immediately. Then your concern should be accuracy. Another pause. Not suppression. Nia watched the conversation carefully now, realizing something unsettling. Marcus wasn't intimidated by institutional authority at all. In fact, he seemed more comfortable confronting systems than individuals. The dean finally sighed softly. What exactly do you want from the university? Marcus's answer came instantly. Honesty. Silence. The hallway suddenly felt much smaller. Marcus continued calmly. I want you to acknowledge the behavioral environment that allowed this to happen repeatedly. The dean's face hardened slightly now. That's a very serious allegation. Marcus met his eyes directly. No, he said quietly. It's a very serious pattern. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Ellison asked carefully, are you threatening legal action? Marcus's expression never changed. I'm evaluating accountability. And somehow, that sounded far more dangerous. Dean Richard Ellison had spent nearly 15 years managing crises at Westbridge University. Student overdoses, faculty scandals, assault allegations quietly negotiated behind closed doors. Every situation followed the same unspoken rule. Contain the story before it damages the institution. But standing outside Nia Brooks's dorm room, Ellison realized something deeply uncomfortable. Marcus Brooks wasn't behaving like anyone he had dealt with before. Most people became emotional under institutional pressure. Marcus became clearer, more focused, more dangerous. The dean adjusted his posture slightly. Mr. Brooks, he said carefully, I think we may be approaching this conversation from different assumptions. Marcus leaned lightly against the doorway. That depends. Ellison forced a diplomatic smile. On what? Marcus's eyes stayed locked on him. Whether your priority is truth, a pause, or liability. The second university official shifted uncomfortably beside the dean. Ellison noticed it immediately. He needed control back. Fast. The university is committed to fairness for all students involved. Marcus answered instantly. People hiding behind neutrality after misconduct are rarely pursuing fairness. Silence. Nia watched the dean closely now. For the first time, she saw cracks forming underneath his polished professionalism. Not panic. Calculation. Marcus continued calmly. You contacted me within hours of public exposure. A pause. That means your response wasn't triggered by student safety. Another pause. It was triggered by visibility. The dean's smile disappeared completely now. That's an unfair characterization. Marcus shrugged once. Then correct it. Another silence. Longer this time. The hallway felt tense enough to vibrate. Finally Ellison spoke more carefully. Miss Brooks, he said, shifting attention toward Nia, did you ever formally report harassment involving Mr. Mercer or his associates? Nia hesitated. Marcus noticed immediately. So did the dean. That hesitation mattered. Because it suggested uncertainty. And uncertainty protects institutions. Nia crossed her arms slightly. I spoke to an RA once. Ellison nodded slowly. Do you recall whether a formal complaint was documented? Nia looked frustrated now. I don't know. Marcus stepped slightly forward. But the behavior continued. The dean looked back at him. We can't act on information that isn't formally processed. Marcus's eyes hardened slightly. That statement only works if students trust the process. Silence again. Ellison's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Because Marcus had just identified the university's biggest vulnerability. Not misconduct, distrust. If students stopped believing complaints mattered, then the institution's entire protective image became performance instead of reality. The second official finally spoke nervously. We're trying to de-escalate tensions before assumptions spread further online. Marcus turned toward him slowly. Assumptions. The official immediately regretted the wording. Marcus continued quietly. A group of male students surrounded a woman after midnight. A pause. There's video. Another pause. What exactly is being assumed? Nobody answered. Because there wasn't a safe answer anymore. Marcus let the silence sit there deliberately. Pressure through stillness. The same technique interrogators use when people begin realizing their prepared language no longer works. Dean Ellison finally changed direction. What outcome are you seeking here? Marcus answered immediately. The same one you should have sought before this became public. Ellison frowned slightly. And that is behavior correction. A pause. Structural accountability. Another pause. And protection for students who stopped believing they'd receive either. Nia looked at Marcus carefully now. She realized something important in that moment. Marcus wasn't here for revenge. That almost made him more intimidating. Because revenge is emotional. Marcus was systematic. The dean folded his hands carefully. You're making broad conclusions from a limited incident. Marcus shook his head once. No. Then came another pause. The incident revealed the conclusions. That sentence landed hard. Because it reframed the entire situation. The confrontation outside the dorm wasn't the problem. It was evidence of one already existing. Ellison exhaled slowly. Mr. Brooks, universities are complicated environments. Marcus answered immediately. Only when accountability threatens powerful people. The hallway fell silent again. Even the second administrator stopped pretending to take notes now. Because the conversation had moved beyond public relations language entirely. Marcus looked directly at Ellison. Let me ask you something. The dean remained quiet. Marcus continued. How many complaints involving Tyler Mercer exist informally? Ellison's expression tightened. I'm not discussing confidential student matters. Marcus nodded once. Interesting. Why? Because you answered a question I didn't ask. The dean blinked slightly. Marcus continued calmly. I asked about informal complaints. A pause. You responded with confidentiality. Another pause. That suggests records exist somewhere. Ellison realized the mistake immediately. So did the second administrator. Nia felt chills watching it happen in real time. Marcus wasn't arguing emotionally. He was dismantling institutional language piece by piece until only truth remained underneath it. The dean straightened slightly. I think this conversation should continue through proper legal channels. Marcus's response came instantly. Now you're thinking accurately. That word again. Accurately. Ellison hated it now. Because every time Marcus used it, it felt less like an opinion. And more like a verdict. The dean finally stepped back slightly. We'll be in contact. Marcus nodded calmly. I'm sure you will. Ellison turned to leave. But before he walked away completely, Marcus spoke one final sentence into the quiet hallway. You still think the video is your problem? The dean stopped walking. Marcus's voice stayed calm. It isn't. A pause. The environment that produced it is. The university tried to regain control over the next 48 hours. Emergency meetings were held behind closed doors. Legal teams reviewed statements. Fraternity advisors panicked quietly. Administrators drafted emails filled with words like community, dialogue, and review process, while avoiding the one thing Marcus knew they feared most: specific accountability. But the situation had already moved beyond containment. Because once people stop whispering about a pattern, the pattern becomes visible everywhere. More students started speaking up